Okay, we have begun.
Okay, hello. Hi, Robert.
Hi there, Jessica.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our master class. My name is Jessica Taskov, and I'm a flutist in New York City. And tonight we have the pleasure of welcoming Robert Dick, flutist, composer, inventor, author, teacher, improviser, innovator, you name it, in this very unique setting via virtual master class presented by the New York Flute Club. Over the next 2 hours, Robert will work with 12-year-old flutist and composer Ilaria Hawley on a piece of theirs entitled Desert Mists. We will then introduce Adeline DeBella, who is a graduate student of Tara O'Connor, who will work with Robert on his 1989 piece Lookout. And finally, in the last portion of the class, Robert and I will discuss various topics all over the place, and including how to learn the first and maybe third of the flying lessons, Etudes Volume 1. So we'll have the music set up so you can follow along here, and we have a lot of ground to cover, and I know we're all very excited. So with that, I would like to introduce Ilaria Hawley. Ilaria is, hi. Ilaria is 12 years old and has quite an impressive bio already. Ilaria is a recipient of 2019 ASCAP Morton Gould Young Composer Award. I see several other awards here. Ilaria's music has been played with, performed by the New York Philharmonic, so this is quite a treat to have the great Robert Dick, flutist composer, work with Ilaria Hawley, young flutist composer. This is very exciting. So welcome.
Well, thank you so much. And before we begin, let's all say thank you to the New York Flute Club. Um, the oldest flute club in the United States, possibly the world, which would mean the solar system too, and the galaxy. So, and so here we are, galactic representatives of new music. So, um, now I was originally under the impression that Ilaria was going to play Desert Mists, but it turns out that it's going to be me. So, and but before we begin, uh, could you tell us a little bit about what motivated you to write the piece and what you thought, the kind of musical reason for the piece to be there is?
Yeah, totally. So, Desert Miss is based on it's it's based on my trip to Joshua Tree National Park in California, and I stayed at the desert there, and I woke up at 5 in the morning one day to I went outside, and there was just like this mist that was crowding around all the hills and everything, and I thought that was really beautiful. And so I decided I would try to write a piece to capture that same moment, in terms of music. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've always felt that the title of a piece is really important because it gives the listener a kind of starting point and a kind of handle on how to follow and and how to absorb what the music is doing. Um, Especially with new music, the degree of satisfaction of anticipation. Um, you know, like music that satisfies anticipation a lot is pop music. And that's why it's pop music. Uh, and but when we have a kind of more abstract piece or just something that's different from what people have heard before, um, I've always felt that composers who name their piece like piece number two are just chickening out, um, I mean, and also as an interpreter, I see this piece in front of me. It's called Desert Mists. I immediately can relate to that in some response to something that's happened in my life. So anyway, this was a real surprise that I was going to play the piece, and I might leave a few speed cones on their side here and there, but I hope we'll get the spirit. Well, thank you. I was going to say, I hope that was okay. So, now, let's talk about, well, first of all, one of the most important decisions a composer has to make is who are you writing for? Because some people can fill in all those unspecific things and some can't. So it's important to know. I imagine when you wrote for the New York Philharmonic, you were pretty specific about every part. Because if you ask orchestra players to improvise, they will play chromatic scales. It's a guaranteed thing. And many years ago, I played in the New Haven Symphony, and there was a Pops concert. And when whoever the composer was, I'm afraid I've long forgotten, wanted the effect of a kind of ocean of chromatic scales. So the easiest way to get that was just to ask everybody to improvise. And out it came, instead of having to sit there and write them all. But so now looking at the very beginning of your piece, and there is, some handy advice here. Breathe in and out into mouthpiece in varying speeds, imitating a calm ocean sound. So now there are a couple of different approaches to that. One could literally blow right through the flute. And if you have the embouchure hole facing you completely perpendicular, you'll get just this very low sound. And if you want to make that louder, you're going to go blow your brains out. And one of the important things I feel about shaping flute sonority is you never want to do just one thing at a time. Have at least two parameters moving. So pitch or color and volume, for example, here. So, for example, if you watch, you'll see that I'm rotating the flute as I blow into it. And I'm changing the fingering along to give it that kind of calm ocean feel. Then out of the middle of nowhere, we've got an FF. And if you do that blowing right into the flute, the chances are it's going to be a bit of a cliched sound. So what I did there was I changed to an air sound. Now, the unfocused air sound is a sound that has one of the biggest dynamic ranges of the flute. So I'm going to back away a little bit so I don't scare Zoom too much. And if you let your lips kind of get involved with that a little bit, you can do things like that. Very good to leave a little space for the performer to recover. In one of my early pieces, Afterlight, there's this gigantic jet whistle at the climax of the piece, followed by a really big grand pause. Because in the first years I played the piece, I used the grand pause to let all the stars clear away before I went on. So now we have kind of whispering syllables. And again, I chose to keep the embouchure hole open because you can get a little more clear if you're whispering. if you're vocalizing, you can go right through the flute.
Yeah.
And then, you know, depending on the aesthetic, I mean, what I just last did is kind of interesting, but for some other piece, because it doesn't really feel like the ocean, you know.
Yeah.
But, okay, so now we have pitch bends, and with rubato, which I thought was an excellent choice. And now everybody thinks that pitch bending is just rolling the flute. And but if you use your head also, start looking up and look down. If you're bending a note downwards, look up and then look down. Conversely, if you're bending a note upwards, start by looking down and bending your note up. This comes from North Indian classical flute technique, because the bansuri players have the greatest range of bends and slides of any style of flute on earth. So, you know, they move their heads a lot. And, you know, why not learn from the best? So, and look at that. There you have a B flat right in a key signature, and I missed it. Too much music with no key signatures. I played a B natural, but yeah. And now we have this little microtonal scale. By leaving the thumb up, doesn't sound like much happened, but we got from, oh, there's some hearable distance. Okay, now to try to get a scratchy sound, once again, will depend a lot on the experience of the players. I started normal to pronounce it correctly. And then added air sounds. Now, as you can see, I'm using an enormous amount of lip motion. You know, violinists, when they get different kinds of sounds, are using their bow differently. It's in a different place on the string. You know, if you're only playing from one basic central position, you're very much limiting your sonic and expressive possibilities. So it's the nature of the flute that we go to where the sound is. So okay, so now we have more of the ocean and, okay. Now, one of the things that is a natural process of composing and listening, which is a lifetime plan, is that you can learn the history of your material. Now, this C&D multiphonic has been used in so many pieces. And it's a signifier that just said, oh, this is another one of them. And I don't think that was your intent. So now, given that there are many thousands of multiphonics for the flute, we could look at some other choices. And the easiest way, and there is a super easy way, to use this major ninth, because the notes are C and D, and we'll be delving into that in Lookout a bit. Is we can transpose this sound both up and down chromatically. what I've done is I've taken the same pattern of open and closed holes and just moved it around the flute. And once you realize what that is, by looking not at the keys, because the keys are deceptive. Oh, it's a trill key. It looks innocent, but it's deceptive. Because you push it way down there on the right hand, and what happens? The air changes all the way up at the top of the flute. So it's easy to think of the trill key as something down low, but it's not. And I have memorized the flute in the sense that I can visualize it anytime I need to, which took practice. But what I see is the holes, not the keys. I know where the keys are. At least hope by now. And so what we have here on your C and D is one small hole open, the small C sharp, and depending on if your flute has a C sharp trill or not, since more and more do, let's assume that it's there, even if it's not on this flute, and there'll be 6 holes closed. It doesn't matter whether your fingers are on them or not. It's just like these chromatic stripes. So the thumb is, well, the imaginary C sharp trill key is 1. The thumb is 2. The B flat thing is 3, 4, 5, 6. So now if you can take that pattern and move it around the flute, you can do what they do and what they do. Now, it's not complete because, there is the flute mechanism and it does allow you and not allow you to do different things. And that's why the Kingma system flute is such a major step ahead, because the sonic potential is just so much greater and putting the sound where the music wants it to go, not where a genius in the 1800s designing a flute for the music of the 1800s was going to put it. So now, since you return to this multiphonic several times in the piece, one of the things you might do is start it there, and then when it comes around again, and then again, and again, and again. So, it's got the same flavor of the major ninth, but it also gives you a chance to embed the multiphonic melodically in the flow of what you're doing. I chose notes that were in the scale you're using, and didn't really try to go anywhere else chromatically because that's not what you're doing in this piece. So, and then the other thing, well, a couple of other things, but one of them is a piece of material with a lot of history is the chromatic scale. Boy, that was ultra exciting when some cave person first invented it. Everybody sat around and said, man, Og has done something incredible. But again, it carries with it so many historic implications. Now, if you want those, which you might, after all, it's your piece and your aesthetic, then fine. But if you're trying to, kind of create a new imagery, blend the colors in your way, then you might think about, how can I get from to in different ways? There are so many kinds of scales, And also, one of the ways you might want to do it is by, because the image of mists and water, you know, the mist doesn't line up like mist, 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 mist. So maybe what you want to do is use the open hole keys a bit. So, for example, well, starting on the D flat, now, are you wanting each trill to be a half step or in the note in the keys in this key signature?
Um, I, you played all of them right when you played them, but but the last one is actually a whole step. Um,
Oh, did I play? Oops.
sorry, it's a whole step down. Yeah,
Oh,
to a,
oh,
but
yeah,
I think yeah. So next time
yeah.
I can probably write in
Yeah.
which notes are
Well, putting a little C natural note head in parentheses next to the G would solve that because the notation for trill means from the written note up, and that's what everybody's going to do. But on the other hand, people used to reading new music would have no trouble at all if you just indicated with a note head, no rhythm, just a tiny little note head with the pitch of where you wanted it to go. So, um, okay, now. So I'm going to try to get from B flat to A, well, here, I'm going to plan ahead here. B flat to A flat. And now from the F sharp, we could trill like that. And maybe that would be a little more ocean-like. And it wouldn't have, you know, all of those associations because, we can't help it. You know, as soon as the chromatic scale comes in, everybody's hearing. And there's one great chromatic scale piece, and Rimsky-Korsakov got it. You know, so. Now, to me, one of the problems in the flute sound is the unrelenting thinness of it, that one note at a time thing, and the colors you can get. So like when you go to measure 62, here we are on the second page. Um, and it wouldn't be very difficult to play that high B flat as an octave. And give it more depth, and you don't need two flutes for that. So now, that's really nice, but you might, if not in this piece, in some future piece, and we know there are going to be a bunch of them. So. That E to A happens to be a perfect place to make a slide.
totally.
If you have a glissando head joint, you'll be much more free with where you can slide, but on a regular open hole flute, the slide in start with air and go to focus, or start with focus and go to air. And then I thought the end of the piece is really quite beautiful, just the way it is. There's a simplicity and a poetry to it that doesn't need any changing, any adorning. And, it seems to naturally ask for to move to non-vibrato. And I would suggest to flute players out there, when you play non-vibrato, especially softly, move to the very top of the sound, the meniscus of the sound. And the first time someone used that word with me, I didn't know what it meant either. And so when you fill a glass of water all the way up, and so that there's some above the actual rim that's held in there by the surface tension of the water, that's the meniscus. So you see, I'm going way to the top surface of the pitch. Instead of which doesn't quite have the emotional yearning, and one needs to think about, as of course as a composer, but as a performer too, the emotional affect of your sound. What is your tone itself conveying, and what kind of expression is in there? And so, here we have a whole note just there, and yet it's got an enormous emotional message that it's sending. And another comment to flutists, we live in the age where everybody's trying to play loud, louder, loudest. And it gets pretty monotonous. It doesn't matter what anything is. If it's all the same, it's all the same. And it won't take very long before the audience begins to think, it's time for a bathroom break. And and practice playing as softly as you can, at least a few minutes every day, because if you can play softer, your louds are going to be louder. So for example, here, I'm going to play 4 notes. The first is soft, the second is loud, the third is softer. The second is, I'm going to try to play it exactly as loud as I did the first time. Okay? So let's see, we'll use different pitches. that second loud A flat sounded louder because it was more contrasted. So now, one of the most useful of Marcel Moïse's books is the one on big slurs, grand liaison. Sounds like a movie from the 1940s, right? We'll go to Paris for a grand liaison. And then, and there's something called organ points. And I should have looked up why it's called that, but I'm just kind of leaving it with this weird name because it's more fun. And those are simply arpeggios that fade out. And, you got to fight for your right to play softly. So, well, Ilaria, we're going to have to move on to the next piece now, but do you have any, well, I guess I have a question. What are you working on now? What are you going to write next?
Well, I actually just a few days ago finished a piece about or not a few days ago, like a week or two ago, about about our time like in quarantine and the effects that COVID-19 have had, and it's for 5 flutes or one flute in electronics.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, so that's what I just finished.
I see. So somebody could overdub the parts.
Right.
Yeah, another way of doing that, it all depends, is there are people who are absolutely masterful with delays and things like that. You know, Melissa Keeling, for example, is absolutely amazing with that stuff. I play acoustic music. I use electronics only to amplify. Like on a big flute, I'll have multiple microphones all over the flute so that there's a super detailed sound plane. But what I've chosen is the drama in my music is that it's all made by a human being. And there are no machines involved at all. And as soon as you hit that first pedal, everybody thinks it's all coming from a pedal. It's just, kind of human nature. So, well, we're looking forward to hearing that piece and the many pieces that will follow. So, a name to remember, folks out there, Ilaria Hawley. Thank you, Ilaria.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ilaria.
Thank you so much.
Cool. Wow, that was really special. I don't think we could ever imagine writing a piece and then having the master play it for us. Pretty cool, and so much great information. So next we have Adeline DeBella, who is a graduate assistant of Tara Helen O'Connor at SUNY Purchase, and I see you are in the studio of SUNY Purchase.
Yes.
That's it. So you're working on Robert's Lookout. So I will disappear again and.
Yeah. So a couple of words about Lookout. Lookout was the first piece composed for the National Flute Association's high school soloist competition. And it set the trend that there would be a new piece composed for the competition every year. And I think that's one of the greatest things that the NFA does, is that it's been a huge contributor to the repertoire. There are 2 or 3 new pieces composed every year. And when Lookout was written, the commission was honorary, but it's actually turned into some money too. So composers can be paid for their work, which is only fair. I mean, work is work, and we all go to the grocery store and we can't like commission the grocer to give us, a turkey. So, um, but anyway, when I thought about, okay, I'm going to write for high school students. Now, a couple of really important things about high school students, and if you're not a high school student, but you've got but you're still high school in your heart, you can play this at any age. Um, you know, and is that motivated high school students are an unstoppable force. They can do anything. You know, the high school student is going to say, oh, cool, sure, I'll go for that. Very often the college student will go, well, yeah, sure, I'm definitely willing to try that. The graduate student is going, well, I'm not sure I'm going to need that for some audition, and well, I haven't worked on anything like that yet. And the doctoral student will go, oh, no. So, let's rock on, high school students. And I also thought, when I was in high school, what would have made me happy? And the answer was clear. It was rock and roll. There was no real rock and roll solo for the flute at that time. There have been a bunch of them that have arrived since then, but this was probably the first. And so some of the sonorities are definitely inspired by like the electric guitar and the wah-wah pedal. We're going to hear that right at the start of the piece. But again, the piece is going to visit a couple of different styles. We're going to have this kind of just almost arena rock introduction, followed by, a very light lyric passage that moves into like 1960s rock. And then in the middle of the piece, Cream leaves the stage and Foreigner takes over to fly it through to the end. So anyway, I thought what we could do probably is, Adeline, why don't you play the introduction and we'll just go to there.
Okay.
Okay, and then we'll work on that for a bit and then we'll move on.
No problem.
Okay, you got the spirit. Let's work on some of the details. Now, this opening gesture, of course, is right out of rock and roll. Bam, wow. The only thing it doesn't have is the chunk at the end, but that comes later. So now, launching a big low note, it's SFP. Now, when you think about all the things that have to happen at once, it's not surprising that it can be a problematic thing to do. But if we divide this complex task into a quick sequence of smaller tasks, we're going to have a much greater chance of success. So now, what has to happen? The first thing, and the most important thing, is you need to hear that D before you play it. Now, if you have perfect pitch, good for you. I don't. And generally, before I walk out on stage and play Lookout, the last thing I'm going to play is a D. I'll know just where it is. Ooh. Now, low D on the flute is there. Ooh, not ooh. Now, so the most important thing, because we're not going to hear it, the rest is leaving a lot of things to chance. So now, you need to hear it and then feel it in your throat as if you're going to sing it. Ooh. It's a great thing to practice, okay? You sing one for us?
Ooh.
Yeah. Now sing it like you actually believe it's going to happen. Ooh.
Ooh.
Yeah, now then you move in that direction. Remember, you do not have to be a great singer to pretend that you are. So, release your inner, whoever it is, rock singer that you like. I know it goes back to the 80s, but, if I was a female flutist, at this moment, I'd be releasing my inner Pat Benatar. And if you don't know who that is, check her out. I thought she was great. I was a big fan. And ooh. So now then, feeling it in the throat is really important. Now we have to form a syllable in the mouth and the embouchure. And then we have to deal with the fact that the flute is filled with inert air, doing nothing. So learning from French horn players, they have a technique called priming the horn, which is, in other words, they blow through the horn a little bit and get the air moving before they make it vibrate, because it's a much lower probability of getting it right if you start the air moving and make it vibrate at the same instant. So why not just, and then of course we have the inertia of our abdominal muscles and all of that. To get them going to the right speed, to start at exactly the right speed, really hard. But if you just start them a little bit, and then it's very easy to speed up. So okay, I'm hearing the sound, I'm feeling it. Ooh. Now. And this is rock and roll. You don't have to not move. You can move all you want. And you can, the recommended, but if you have a different motion, that's cool too. Either go forward and up or go back and up. Or okay. Yeah. So I would suggest as you practice this, and this is something that comes up in lots of pieces. Allow myself to be more physical. You can move a bit more. I mean, when you're playing Lookout, you are the soloist, and when Lookout is played really well, the listeners will be able to hear the whole band. But, in order to do that, don't follow the rules of, orchestral decorum, because you're not in an orchestra now. If you're, playing section flute, well, that's a different reality. But here, when you think about, How would Jimi Hendrix play this note? Wow. You know?
Right. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so now you're going to try to sneak your voice in, and you did that really well.
Thank you.
Ideally, the audience should not know that you started singing. Um, and so think of it more as whoo than ooh. But what you did was, I thought, sounded great. So,
Thank you.
yeah, I mean, the sound just opened up like a rainbow, um, which was exactly what I was hoping for. Um, Now, you might want to depend a little less on breath pressure and a little more on embouchure.
Okay.
Um, you know, the wind instruments are divided into two classes. There's resistant ones, which are called impedance instruments, like the clarinet is the avatar of impedance. And they're admittance instruments, which are based on flow. And the flute is the avatar of flow. So, what we want to do is move the flute and, because you don't have to worry about the bottom of this sound because your voice has got that covered.
Right.
So, what you need to do is sing the bottom, play the top, and the rest miraculously will fill in. Yeah. Okay. Now, you notice that was easier to do, right?
Yes.
And it sounded better.
Great.
Remember that. We're going to put two and two together. There is only one technical rule for the flute, and everything we do needs to be in harmony with this concept. But there actually is a master key that unlocks it all. And so I once said that at a class, and Peter Lloyd jumped up and said, "Don't tell them." But I'm a believer in telling it. So it's very simple, which is why sometimes it's hard to apply. But starting with a clear musical concept of what you wish to do right now. When you find the easiest way to produce it, you are correct. It's going to sound best. Now, some things are, even with the easiest way to produce it, they're not easy, but they could be harder and they could sound worse. So, I mean, I'm going to play a relatively difficult multiphonic now. Now, if I tried to balance that by how much I blew, the sense of strain is going to take over. And that's the emotional message that'll come from the sound instead of this, floating, glowing. So, okay, now, oftentimes the introduction of Lookout gets played a little too slowly. Now, it does say a piacere and all of that, and freely. So I'm not the kind of composer who's going to go, yes, it's freely, but this is my idea of freedom. It's your idea. Um, but what I would suggest is take a look at this. The opening two gestures, the one you just played and what's coming up, are both different forms of the arch.
Mhm.
And, you know, we want to have that feeling of going over the arch. So, um, so that F sharp G A, those are just pickups. Don't play them like it's the Eroica Symphony. Uh, all they're trying to do is ya-dee-dee-da. Um, and in one of the brief times that I worked with Dario Anthony Dwyer, she said something really profound. She said, play the unimportant stuff unimportantly. Um, and so if you play, you know, well, maybe Grand Funk Railroad would have done it like that, uh, but okay, cool. Now, as a phrase, that works so much better.
Mhm.
And even if there are imperfections, if you're playing the music, people will hear the music and feel the music. Now let's get to work on those imperfections. Um, now, the in playing multiphonics, the biggest mistake that flutists make is to think that you blow less for the lower note, more for the higher note, and somehow capture it in the middle. Now, with super easy multiphonics, you can get sort of primitive sounding results with that, like the C and D multiphonic that was in Ilaria's piece. Is really easy. And you could do it with just the air, but do you want to sound like that? So now, so let's talk about what you do, not what you don't do. The first thing in learning a multiphonic, and everyone out there on YouTube, you will find some instructional videos I put there. And one of them is called Your First Multiphonic, and it's all about this C and D. Another one is called The Three Types of Multiphonics, because there are three types. And it's important to know which type you're dealing with. So now, the three types, by the way, are small intervals, which are the whole step or less. The main body of multiphonics, which are sort of the minor third up to the minor 10th, you know, all of those, and then and which don't have to be just two notes. And then large interval multiphonics, the major 10th and more. And all three have, quite different production methods. And so very important to know what you're grappling with. Now, we're dealing with this C octave. And this is like, for lack of a better term, a regular multiphonic, uh, which has a gigantic advantage over most of the others, which is you can throat tune to both notes. And you're using regular fingerings. You've got the whole dynamic range of the flute at your disposal. Now, so um, one of the ways that we can develop and outgrow the limits of so much classical flute teaching. And, my musical life began as a classical flute student. When I was 15, if you said, "Hey, Robert, what are you going to do with your life?" I would have told you, "I'm going to be the first flutist in the New York Philharmonic someday." And I was doing everything possible. But none of my training involved playing by ear. None of it involved hearing the music I was playing before I played it. It was kind of knowing what to do, blowing and saying, "Is that okay or not?" And hearing, because so often it's, all right, it's time to play. So the brain becomes the command and control center. It's like, "Fingers, are you in position?" "Yes, we are. Yes, we are." "Okay, lips, are you there?" "Certainly, sir." "Okay, breath, ready to go. 4, 3, 2, 1, fire." And out it comes. And only then do we listen to it. Now, that's totally backwards. Hearing was the last thing in the chain of events, not the first thing. Now, it's very easy to say, and teachers, man, we can pontificate. The Pope's got nothing on me. Now, but how do you get there? When I realized that this was going to be necessary, and I realized that, I didn't start that 20 years earlier, but I was just going to have to grapple with it now. I did my very best to hear one note before what further than what I was going to play. So if I was going to play, Toffanel 12, okay, but what was going on in my head was, as best I could, and I made mistakes, and I still sometimes make mistakes, and we're people, we're not machines. So, but as I played, I was working hard to hear da, hearing da, da, da. And so it wasn't that long before I could hear two notes. And so, it's so important that if we're trying to make any kind of major change in our musicality, number one, do not waste your precious life beating yourself up because something hadn't happened before. It's now. It's always now. So then figure out what you can do. What's in your grasp. We all hear these legendary people who can hear like 43 measures ahead. And as soon as I meet one, I'll let everyone know. But so you see, I didn't try to like do some gigantic thing at first. I was just trying to go one note at a time. So now, what we need to hear and look out is okay. So a great way to do it always is as best you can. Okay, you want to sing it for us? Yeah. All right, Adeline, you're a gamer. Um, so, now, okay. When we play a multiphonic, The airspeed is there to control the dynamic, just like it is for when you're playing one note at a time. I mean, whether you're playing one note or five, it's flute playing. And you already know a lot about that, a huge amount. So, don't think, I don't know anything about this. You know almost all of it. So now, in this case, the airspeed is handily provided by the composer. Put an F there. So, we're going to blow at forte, whatever that means to you. And then we have to throat tune. Now, if they're two different notes, we're going to throat tune to the weaker note, which is almost always the lower note. But here we have the C octave, and if your vocal cords are set as if you're silently singing a C, ooh, ooh, it's like that moment before you sing where you can feel it in your throat. Ooh, at that moment, you have set yourself up to be the perfect resonator for a C natural. And, we all hear about, the connection between the flute and voice. It's really profound. Now, if we were playing rototoms and felt like we were singing, it would be more musical. But if we're playing a wind instrument, there's also this physical connection, which is very powerful. And so the idea that you just hold your throat open is obsolete. It was a very helpful step from the super tight throat that people used to use. When the open throat got developed in the United States, as I like to remind my European colleagues, in, in the 20s and 30s, it sure made things sound better. But the tune throat, in other words, as you're playing, whatever you're playing, like behind was and Julius Baker had a vocal coach. If it worked for Julie, it'll work for you. Dorio Anthony Dwyer warmed up vocally before she started practicing. Ron Paul came from the French conservatory tradition where your musical education begins in a solfège class. My favorite flutist, whom many of you will never have heard of, Hari Prasad Chaurasia, a North Indian classical flutist, the only flutist, by the way, who I own more than 20 CDs by, and started out as a singer. He came from a village that was too poor. No one had any money for instruments. So he sang. You don't have to buy anything to sing. And another famous flutist started out exactly the same way in Belfast. James Galway started out singing because there was no money for instruments. So, if it worked for all these folks, have you heard Carol Winsent sing? She sings so beautifully. And she was a big inspiration to me. So, okay, so now we're going to blow at forte. We're going to set up to sing a C. Now, you don't have to be in the same octave as the C. So you want to be in the octave that's free and comfortable for you to be singing. So I'm going to be ya-dee-da-da, which is going to be kind of low for you. So you so da-dee-da-da. Okay, and now multiphonics are played from the jaw position of the lowest pitch. Your jaw and bottom lip are in charge of getting the air down into the flute to play the lowest note. Your upper lip is going to feel like two little fingers going like that. And it's the upper lip's job to get the air to go to the highest note. Without blowing harder, okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Here, why not just play the C octave for now? Just like start right there. Okay. Now, somewhere along the way, this idea that multiphonics should be played without vibrato, um, I mean, why? Um, you know, I mean, that was like people just couldn't play them at all. So if it came out at all, then they were happy. Well, that was half a century ago. So, you have such a beautiful tone. Why not play two of those tones at the same time with your beautiful vibrato?
Okay.
Yeah, wouldn't you rather hear that? Uh, so, and the way I feel about this piece is I articulate more. And I'm thinking also more of plectrums on guitar strings. Ting, tong, tong. And the tenuto sound is like, it indicate, give it weight. Ting, tong, 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 tong.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. And the same thing, your jaw would be on the middle F sharp, and you build the multiphonic up from that.
Okay.
Yeah, you see, the use your embouchure more, um, and um, and the more you do this kind of thing, you'll discover the dimensions in your regular flute playing are going to increase enormously. I mean, the more things you can do, the more things you can do. So,
Okay.
now, now the F sharp and D, this is a higher order of difficulty.
Yes.
But what's the easiest way to do it?
Um,
The F sharp is the weaker note, so it's going to get the throat tuning.
mhm.
I mean, if I wish there was a way to throat tune on both notes, and there only is if there's an octave relationship. But oh, and the real challenge in multiphonic playing is to hear the throat tuning notes clearly, and they are the weaker notes. Now, don't blame me for that. I didn't design the universe. But, if it was up to me, the throat tuning notes would be a lot easier to hear. But no one asked me. So, oh. So the throat line there is dun 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 dun. Dee, dee, da, da, da. Okay, now, because we were quickly running out of time, the singing and playing stuff also works really, I thought, quite well. And again, a little less dependence on air pressure and more on embouchure. So the first thing is you got to lock your ears onto that D, right? Because there's two things going on. The voice is singing, ooh. See?
Right.
We're working our career as backup singers. Ooh, ooh. Okay, so now, ooh, and the flute is playing. Now, we're not going to be able to throw tune that melody because we're busy singing the D, but and you tended to cut it off, yep, maybe a little more starkly than I would do it, but that's fine. Um, well, when a composer invites other people into the piece of music, I'm inviting you. Um, and I'm not a believer in the 19th century vision that there's God, there's composers, and they're minions, and your job would be to do my bidding. Well, that's so passé. Give us a break. And that attitude has just produced so much pain and so much suffering in the world. So, forget that. And so instead, so if you feel it, yep, play it that way, because it certainly doesn't say not to. Okay. So now the second one is a little harder. Now, back when I wrote this piece, I could sing that line at the pitch it was written. I didn't know that as I got older, I was going to lose some of those high notes. So as much as I'd love to demonstrate it in the octave you're going to sing, it won't sound very good. So, so the voice is now singing the melody while the flute is holding the G. Now, because the voice has more harmonics in it, the D tends to jump up an octave. And if you turn the flute out and make the airstream longer, you can help it stay in the low octave. A longer airstream enhances lower frequencies. Okay, want to have a go with that? Yeah, yeah. Now, in classical music, turnout means like, in contemporary music, turnout means turn out. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now, since we're losing the lower part of the sound in our sonic kitchen, we got to figure out like how much lowness can I pour into this? Well, opening your mouth more and getting air to go deeper in the flute would be a good strategy.
Okay.
Okay. And maybe sing softer. Okay, here it comes. That's, you see, it's developing now. Yeah,
Yeah, that was better.
yeah, yeah. Now, because what's supposed to happen is, it's supposed to feel like just a D with a certain color, and then all of a sudden out of it, this melody floats. Okay, now, the rest of this little introduction, please stay in rhythm. Okay, it's a triplet, 2/8, a triplet, and a half note.
Okay.
It ain't that deep. So, okay, now that last multiphonic is marked MF. if you try to attack that forte or more, it's doable, but you're painting yourself into a very tough corner. Now, what you need to get used to is the inner hearing. Like, that's actually all you need to hear there. Because if you're there, you're supporting that. And now you definitely need the
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Now, before we stop, a shameless commercial. How shameless can he be? Well, he's going to plug his book. That's how shameless he is. You'll find this super, super helpful. And it will do what it says. It will really help you develop your tone, and you'll get a basic working knowledge of extended techniques. Another shameless commercial, the Robert Dick Contemporary Flute Week, which is in late June to early July in North Carolina. We are hoping and hoping and hoping that the COVID situation will be ready for us to have it in person. We're planning on that, but if it isn't, we'll do it online. There's info on that on Facebook, on my website, robertdick.net. This book you can get through any flute shop, and you can also get it through robertdick.net. If you do, I'll sign it. And so now, one of the ways you can help break the habit of trying to form the multiphonics with the breath is to practice them really softly. See how steady that air is. And working on playing a very steady breath. Imagery is helpful for that. I like to link my breath to the rotation of the earth. It doesn't wobble, it's nice and solid,
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Now, that's a big step in the right direction. There are more to take, but immediately it started. Well, first of all, the two notes were right there.
Right. Yeah.
And so, once you begin to understand how this stuff works, then it's practice. And not surprisingly, it's a lot of practice. But, if you are dedicated to a life in music, the prospect of a lot of practice is a very exciting thing. I think the most important thing I learned from Julius Baker was the joy of the work itself. Like, we know it's not going to be perfect right now, but we're here doing it. We're on the case. We're working on it. And that practice should be, really hard. I mean, talking about really serious practice can be a joyful experience. And it doesn't have to be full of angst and self-hate. It's just, we're not going to be satisfied with less than our best, but we're going to also appreciate and take joy from the improvement that's happening. If I may say so, I thought in these 40 minutes, your playing multiphonically improved quite a bit.
I agree.
So we're going to have to move on, but Adeline, thank you. Thank you so much. And And I've forgotten to say something that's so important. Thank you to everybody who plays my music. It means the world to me. So, thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That was awesome. Thank you. um, you know, instead of I'll go a little off speech and just kind of keep going with this. I feel like most of us have this book and most of us have been exposed to it. Even the most classical, we all have this and we practice from it. And I made a list of questions about singing and how you decided which kind of vowels to use, and if we could kind of
Okay.
go over some of the.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say that, in the days when that book was written, there was no internet. Believe it or not, kids, there was a time before the internet. And I didn't have to write the book by incising clay tablets, but it was pretty close. I actually did the music examples in the first printing of the book with rub-offs from Letraset. Oh boy, was that work. And so there is the internet now, and there are these instructional videos on YouTube, and they pair really well with the written material. So, like before you launch into the multiphonic chapter, why not watch the how to play multiphonics videos? So now,
Yeah.
the reason I became convinced about singing wasn't because other people told me about it. I was a very stubborn young guy, and if I wasn't going to do it myself, I just, I was good at grouchiness. So,
We call that New York grit.
so, but the good and bad day things drove me out of my mind. I mean, like, I thought, look, yesterday I practiced for 5 hours and I finished sounding my very best. Why does it have to be a mystery today when I open the flute case? Is there going to be any tone in there or not? And sometimes there was, and wow, life was cool. And sometimes there wasn't, and it was misery for an hour before the first real note sounded. And this just doesn't make any sense. I mean, if anybody can sound good ever, well, then everybody should be able to sound good all the time, assuming they're practicing. I mean, if you haven't touched the flute in 3 weeks, there's no mystery about what's coming out. But, this came to a head for me in the 1 year I studied very seriously with Julius Baker. I studied with him privately, which was my freshman year in college. And I was working like a demon, and I just didn't get it. Why did I sound so horrible on some days? And why was it so, my best on others? Because I was really, I wasn't skipping any days. And so I did what I was supposed to do. I asked my teacher. And Julie knew the answer, but he didn't know how to put it into words. That was not his forte as a teacher. His teaching was emotion-based, not fact-based. When I met Thomas Nyfinger, I discovered that a great flutist could actually articulate things and talk about them, musically and technically. But, Julie's idea was, look, let me explain. So what he told me was, and you can see he was trying hard, he goes, well, it sounds right when it feels right. And I thought, well, yeah, I thought even I knew that. And how do I get from it doesn't feel right to it feels right? And I made up my mind then and there that I was going to solve this problem someday. No one else seems to have done it. And this is an important mountain to climb. And I'm going to appoint myself to go on a secret mission. If I fail, I don't have to tell anyone. So, and so I started by asking every flutist I met, no matter who they were, a student or famous person. And you'd be amazed at how many famous players said, oh, God, this has been a bane of my existence my whole life.
Wow.
It gets maybe a little better, as decades go on, but really, if you figured out, would you call me? That's an exact quote from a famous principal flutist in a major, one of the big five American orchestras. And then I met flutists who didn't know what I was talking about. And that's what bent my head, because like Ron Paul had no idea what I was talking about. He looked at me like I had told him that I had a terrible disease. And he felt really badly, but he didn't know what to say. But so I thought, okay, the answer is there, but flutists can't tell you what it is. People who don't have this problem can't explain it. People who do have the problem obviously can't explain it, because if I understood it, I'd fix it. So I made the decision to study acoustics. I did the work. And I thought my brain was going to melt and pour out of my ears. But it was embarrassing how easy it was to find the answer once you went beyond the flute. So the first lesson was a life lesson. If you look at the world like this, you're not going to see very much at any one time. And the answer you need might be right there, but you can't see it. So to think widely and look for many sources of information. You got that, Republicans? So now, and fanatics of any stripe. So now, that was my equal time line. But so what I learned through science was that the tone of the flute was not just made in the flute. That's what most people think. You blow the flute, the sound's made in there. We all learn the same thing on the first day. You blow the air, it flips in and out of the hole. It's this wonderful term. It excites the air in the flute into vibration. So many scientific terms are kind of so awful, but exciting into vibration. I love that. And then it goes out into the world and everybody loves it. Well, it's not that simple. The air itself is on that one-way trip. The sound is not. Your airstream is a two-way street, and the traffic is moving in both directions at the same time all the time. And folks, the science is in. It has been done. This is fact, not opinion. And so the sound energy is also traveling back through you, and it's being shaped. The sound is doing something like that, but really fast, by its repeated journeys through four primary resonators: your chest, your throat, your mouth, and your flute. Now, every junior high school band section since the beginning of time has proved that the tone goes with the person, not with the flute, right? We all try each other's flutes and we still sound like us. So something more powerful is happening in the person than in the flute. Now, 3 of the big 4 resonators are inside the body. That's why we win. And the very powerful secondary resonators, your sinus cavities, are in you. Now, I refer to them as secondary because we can't change their shape voluntarily. All the others we can alter. So, so I was thinking through this one night, thinking, okay, so there's really two things going on. There's me playing the flute. I've been doing that for 20 years, and I thought I had some kind of reasonable handle on that. But then there's the flute playing me. This is new information. I said, okay, this energy, because it's more a form of energy literally than a sound, but this energy coming from the flute through me, how could we make it most welcome? What would the best situation be for it? And now I'd worked my way through like 300 pages of this acoustics book, so I did know a few things by then. And if you want to do it too, it's called Fundamentals of Musical Acoustics by Arthur Benade. That's B as in boy, Enade. A great scientist, terrible writer, but it's all there. And so, well, if I set my vocal cords up as if I was going to sing the note, then wouldn't the resonances in the body match the resonances in the flute? Now, I knew that it didn't have to be unison, like, as we did with Adeline before. If you're in tune on a C, you're in tune with every C. Okay, the universe got that one right. So, no, I could be ooh or ooh. It'd be wishful thinking to get the next one. I don't have it. So, but, and so I thought, okay. Now, I've been talking for a while. It doesn't feel optimal. It doesn't feel bad, but it doesn't feel optimal. So what I did was I played an ultra exciting F major scale. Then I sang along with it as best I could. It's better now. It's a long time later. And it felt right. And I thought, gotcha. And then now, twice in my life I've had these eureka moments, and both times the same thing happened. It was like two tidal waves come in one after the other. There was the tidal wave of euphoria, got it, understand it, followed by the tidal wave of humility, because it was there in front of me the whole time. And I just didn't know how to understand it or how to hear it. All those flute players I talked to, they gave me the answer whether they knew it or not, because the ones without the problem all sang. Julius Baker had a vocal coach. As I mentioned before, Dorio Anthony Dwyer, the most powerful flutist I've ever heard in my life, and powerful and with beauty, warmed up by singing. It wasn't late breaking news, but for those of us who were inhibited about singing, and when I was a kid, I was extremely inhibited. I did not come from a family where we sang. In fact, every time I opened my little mouth, I was told to shut up. And so if you come from a shut-up family, you'd have to figure it out like I did. If you come from a singing family, it's kind of there. And so, but it's good to actually understand what it is that you're doing. So
one of my questions was, is some people believe in vocalizing high and then vocalizing middle and throat tuning, lower or as low as you can, depending on, and so I can personally get middle C and the next C and the C above that. And I find it's pretty easy to stay up there, and I found reasons why I want to do it. But when I'm playing your music and I want to sing in a certain register, I mean, it matters, right? Which
Yes, it usually does. So now, first of all, if you listen to your flute tone as a voice, the syllable the sound is making is the syllable you should be forming. So, like, that's some sort of ooh, ooh. Very often putting a little umlaut and mixing a little E into the basic syllables. But I recommend starting on oo and ah. It's simple, it's clear, and it works. So oo is from low B to the second D. Ah is from D sharp kind of all the way up. The third octave sounds like E, but if you back it up with E, it's going to be pretty shrill. Useful in orchestra playing when you have to cut through traffic. There are times when you really need to put a razor's edge on your tone to slice through the string section, and E is a great syllable for that. But so like, I mean, how would you sing that? So that would be what you want to enunciate in your mouth.
So it's coming from the flute more from than your mind telling you what to do. You heard.
Well, I think they're one and the same. I mean, you know what's in the flute? Nothing but air. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the sound of the flute. Soak it in. Instruments don't make music. People do. And it's coming from your inner ear.
I have another question. Sorry, go ahead.
And so, and of course the instruments have characteristics. I mean, there are reasons why we chose the flute and, not the sarrusophone. And there'd be reasons why someone would choose the sarrusophone and not the flute. So, but in the case of every wind instrument, hearing the instrument as a voice and working with it that way, makes complete sense. And it also means that we are opening the pathway for our emotions, and not putting up some kind of intellectual, wall.
From a technical standpoint, one technical question, is there any advice on how to maybe not force the voice as we're teaching ourselves these techniques and when we're literally singing along?
Yes. Now, there are 3 videos called Throat Tuning Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. And if you look at them, you'll see that the number of people who watch Part 1 is huge, and the number of people who watch 2 is less, and Part 3 less. That's the curve of laziness, folks. Don't go on that one. Now, you don't have to binge watch them. In fact, it makes more sense to watch the first one, do the exercises, then watch the second one, which describes how to sing and play through the entire range of the flute. Now, the cardinal rule of singing and playing is always sing softly and gently. Nobody can sing loudly through a flute aperture. It sounds like it's a hostage. So, And the cardinal rule of beginning singing is do your utmost to never strain the voice. So now those things are in perfect harmony with each other. Always sing softly and gently. Now, that means that the air is going to move slowly through your vocal cords. Now, to play the flute higher and higher means the air is going faster and faster. So how does one rectify what seems to be a conflict? Well, what you do is you do sing softly and gently. The air does go slowly until it reaches the embouchure, where you're going to purse your lips forward and compress it there and make it go faster. Okay, so like, see, and like behind that wah-wah pedal sound, I'm going to do it on a low B now just for fun. Now, see, now the voice is going to get a tiny bit louder, but really, but if you try to do it with airspeed, you're going to suffer. It's going to hurt. And by definition, pain is bad. So, and there's, if you're thinking, well, I'll just get past this pain, you are definitely on a wrong pathway. Wherever you're going with that pain, it's just going to get worse and worse. So, so it's using the embouchure more. Now, it is my perception, I don't even want to say opinion, because I don't think it is opinion, is that most flutists don't move their lips nearly enough. You can play from one position. I mean, people do all the time, and if that's the way you want to sound, that's exactly how to get it. But the nature of the flute is to go where it accepts the air most easily for what you're doing right now. So as we're going up, move your jaw forward and your lips forward. Now, of every classical flute player I've observed, Julius Baker moved his embouchure more than any other, and it sounded better. So, and, people labor under this idea of like, that's the way I play. Well, the way you play is completely up to you, and it's totally changeable if you want to change it. If you're utterly happy with what you're doing, well, good for you. I know personally, I'm trying to improve every year, and my goal, I'm going to be the baddest 95-year-old flute player there ever was. I'm going to be a lot better than I am now. Hopefully with a short-term memory to remember what I'm doing. But so, excuse me. So that's now, and I demonstrate that on the video, both in front view and side view. Okay, I can't hear you. I still can't hear you. What happened? My sound is up. Dum, dum, dum.
Problem. You are unmuted, but we can't.
Okay, something has happened. I haven't muted myself.
No,
I
it's
did. I unmuted. The joys of electronics. Um, no, okay, that wasn't it. Oh well.
well. She's gone away for just a moment. I think she's going to sign back in.
Okay.
Um,
Well, do you have a question?
this is Jeff. I'm actually going to check the chat and see if anybody had any.
Okay, good
Questions?
idea.
So far, no questions. If anybody.
Oh, okay.
Jessica, okay, great. There you are.
Okay, Jessica's back. Okay, super.
Okay, this is a fascinating discussion because having, most of you don't know me, and I'm just a regular old classical flutist and not a new music specialist by any means. And this is why I sort of wanted to do this because, I'm learning so much. So I've sort of done a crash course and.
Okay, can I add one comment?
Sure.
Can we get rid of this stupid term specialist?
Okay.
I mean, we are musicians.
Yes.
And if you say specialist, that implies that someone is only doing one thing.
I know, and that's the thing. I don't want to only do one. I want to.
Well, you're not alone there. You're definitely not alone. I don't do one thing either. And so,
But I having done this crash course in learning as much of your music as possible lately, and I hadn't gotten much of a chance to do it before for no reason other than it just didn't come up, and I've been at the grind for 2 decades. So, but you've done an amazing job of documenting everything for us. So I encourage everybody. I mean, here's an entire DVD on flying lessons, how to learn them. And it's so helpful. And I took the approach of learning them first on my own to get my own interpretive thing going, and then to go to the DVD and kind of cross check. And having gone through all the exercises, I found that it did come right down to the singing. That was the first and foremost, most important thing. So I'm happy that we took a lot of time to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, the instinctual thing, of course, is to want to sing louder as you go up.
Right. And then
but it's not going to work. So and so instead you'll find if you develop the when you're not playing the flute, sing, and in fact taking some voice lessons is a very good thing.
Yes.
I have a vocal coach, and studying with her has been the best thing I've done for myself in my playing in the last few years.
What kind of a vocalist is she?
Um,
Does it matter? I mean, who should we get as a vocal teacher?
a good teacher. Some
Right,
teachers
doesn't
are not good. It doesn't really matter whether or not they sing a lot of new music or they sing Baroque music or classical, someone who can actually teach. And I went through a few teachers until I found somebody who I felt I can work with.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I want to leave a couple of minutes for questions, but I had 2 tiny things we were going to talk about. And one of them was tricks. Do you have tricks for these things?
There are no tricks.
Did you hear it, everybody?
There are no tricks and there are no tips. There's understanding, there's technique, and there's practice. But there's just no tricks.
As far as other tricks, I see I had taped the first flying lesson to my wall here so I could be able to play it. But I want to ask a question. In my beginner mind and classical self, took a passage like this, where I don't know if everyone can see it, where you
Yes.
basically are, what would we call it exactly? Like tremolo of
Well, you're
multiphonics?
playing a tremolo,
Right.
It's the same trill the whole way through.
Thank you.
It's like you're playing low G with the thumb up and you're trilling the C sharp key on the foot.
Right. Right. Beautiful. um, I found myself wanting to kind of like go through and find a line in there and find the placement. And one of the things I did was kind of play one and then stop and then play one and stop and play one and stop.
Well, the learning process is exactly that. I mean, before you can, the goal is to have this phrase look like one of those slow, those fast motion pictures of a flower opening.
Ah, that's nice.
Well, but before you can do that, you need to go where the steps are. So and behind that, my computer is doing the weirdest thing right now. Be gone. Well,
it's so mentally stimulating to take something like that and first of all freak out, and then second of all go through each one and then be able to actually hear all of those pitches and do it, and it affects the sound. I mean, I know everyone knows that 5 minutes of harmonic practicing really can change your sound pretty quickly, and when you do this, it's kind of like that on steroids. It changes everything so beautifully.
yeah. Well, why should we limit ourselves?
Right.
How would that serve us? And every time you learn something new, something old does not fall out of your head. And I think of music as like a gigantic tree where the roots are feeding the leaves and the leaves are feeding the roots, and the old informs the new and the new informs the old. It's all about the interconnection, the naturalness of it, and it's not a big intellectual exercise. And it's not about being, some sort of dry scientist. But if I have a hero, it would be Leonardo da Vinci, someone who really, really investigated the material world, but also, was just this conduit of amazing inspiration. And so, if you've done the work on the production side, which is very logical and does really have to be based on the acoustic realities of how sound works, how the body works, how the flute works, how our hearing works, all of that, then we're most free to, have inspiration flow through us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know if anyone knows this, but Robert and I didn't know each other before. And when I was recruited to put together a virtual masterclass, his name flashed across my head like a banner. And after all the research and studying and practicing and playing, I have been able to pinpoint why. And that is because I feel that inspiration and determination not to accept defeat, and and to be expansive and to come up with new things and to really push things forward, but from an inner need to make beautiful things. And
yeah, well, creativity is really life itself.
Yeah.
And the natural state is creative. Ask any baby. Watch any hand any 2-year-old something that's not dangerous, please, but that they've never seen before, and watch what they do with it.
Mhm.
They will do something that you would never think of as an adult. It's just amazing. And so we don't want to lose like this childlike wonder at the world.
Yeah.
Um, and and if we can hold on to that, and people ask me sometimes, well, how can I recapture that? And I say, well, just try to remember back as far as you can, just when you were really a really little kid. And we all have some memories from that time.
Yeah.
And, I remember sitting on the floor in my room watching these dust motes in the sunlight. For some reason, that's a very powerful memory. And it kind of puts me back there.
Yeah, this is
Um,
something we all need now, and I find it so inspiring. Thank you.
well, thank you. Well,
Yeah,
I,
it's
I,
time.
th- I think we're done.
Um,
So,
does anyone have any before we stop? Of course, we want to thank the New York Flute Club. Thank Robert. I want to thank Jeff Mitchell and Jennifer Zabel, who have been running this tech, because it wouldn't happen without
we
that.
couldn't do it.
Do it. Thank you to Adeline. Thank you to Ilaria. It's been a really wonderful, inspiring class. And yeah, I can't wait to ask you about all the other sounds I have questions about, and cool, because I have a giant list here of
Okay.
things that I want to know.
Well, first of all, thank you, Jessica. Um, I'm glad my name flashed across the banner.
I like
And
the banner.
all that time I spent with test tubes and Eye of Newt, I guess it worked. And if any of you out there want to actually work directly, send me an email. Robert@robertdick.net. And please think about coming to the summer class. It's not about for only advanced players. It's, we are there for people making their very first forays into contemporary music, as well as for, really experienced people. So it's the Robert Dick Contemporary Flute Week. Ta-da, look at that.
See the tech.
Magique.
Thank you, tech.
Magique. Wow. See, I couldn't do that. So back to the test tube and the Eye of Newt. So anyway, thank you so much, everyone. And, the New York Flute Club has meant a lot to me over my life. It's where, as a kid, I discovered the whole wider world of the flute. And, it's an amazing ongoing thing. My first teacher, Henry Zlotnick, was a student of George Barrère. And, the beginner of all of this. So thank you, George. We're carrying on.
Yeah. All right. I don't see any questions. Oh, we have some thank yous.
Okay.
All
Well,
right,
then,
everybody.
well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ilaria. Thank you, Adeline. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, New York Flute Club. And, focus on the joy while you're working really hard. Okay. Bye-bye, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.